what if, and stick with me here, what if being a real, true American, like really American, meant being Christian?
Ooh, that's a loaded question right out of the gate.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of what we're dealing with today, or at least trying to understand.
Yeah.
Right.
No, definitely for folks our age, 45 to 60-ish.
Yeah, our generation.
Yeah, it's like we've seen this like massive shift in
We,
America, right?
yeah,
Like think back to, I don't know, when you were a kid, like did religion feel this, I don't know, this big in everyday life back then?
honestly, not even close. I mean, things just felt calmer.
Way less charged, for sure.
Exactly. Less charged when it came to, like, religion mixing with politics.
Yeah, yeah.
Which brings us to today's deep dive.
Oh, here we go.
We're tackling Christian nationalism.
And we've got this like awesome Throughline episode from NPR to help us untangle this whole thing.
It's a good one.
So good. It goes deep, like way back to the beginning, like early America.
Okay, so hold on. Help me out here. We're talking about more than just "In God We Trust" on the dollar bill, right?
Oh, way more. This is about like believing that America, like the nation itself, was chosen by God.
Chosen by God, wow.
Yeah, and that America's laws, the whole system, should be based on like hardcore Christian values.
Whoa, okay, so that's a lot. When did this whole idea even start? Was it like always kind of there under the surface?
I mean, you could go all the way back to those Puritan folks, the super religious settlers.
Oh yeah, they wanted religious freedom, but also to make a super godly society, right?
Exactly, that whole city on a hill thing. They saw America as like the shining example for the rest of the world.
Right, right. But here's the thing. This chosen nation idea was happening at the same time as slavery, right?
And that's what's wild. The episode talks about how slaves were often kept from hearing the Exodus story.
Wait, Exodus. Like Moses and escaping slavery?
Yep, that one. It's like so ironic, right?
It's like the opposite of what America was supposed to be about.
Totally. And you see that chosen nation idea morphing over time to fit different agendas.
So what happened after those early days? How did it change?
So in the 1800s, you get this wave of Catholic immigrants, right?
Okay.
And some Protestants saw them as a threat, like they're going to change our religion and culture.
Ah, that old fear of the other messing things up.
Classic, right? And then post-Civil War, things get even more, I don't know, twisted.
What do you mean?
The chosen nation thing got all tangled up with white supremacy.
Hold up, white supremacy. How did that happen?
Think about groups like the KKK. They didn't just like terrorize black people, they used Christian symbols to do it.
Like crosses and stuff?
Yep, crosses, Bible verses, the whole 9 yards. They were like, we're the real Christians defending a Christian America.
That's so messed up, using those powerful symbols for hate.
It gets worse. The episode mentions this movie, Birth of a Nation.
Oh yeah, the super racist one.
And get this, they showed Jesus in heaven as a white dude.
Like explicitly white.
Oh, yep. It was basically saying white supremacy is God's will. Crazy.
Wow. Okay, so we've got chosen nation tied to anti-Catholicism, then white supremacy. Where does it go from there?
Well, fast forward to the 20th century and you see the rise of like the religious right.
Privileges, right, okay.
And it gains traction in places like Orange County, California, fueled by figures like Barry Goldwater.
Goldwater, the conservative politician?
That's the one. He was hardcore anti-communist, and during the Cold War, Christianity became part of that whole fight.
Like good versus evil. America and Christianity versus communism and atheism.
Exactly. So this idea of America being a Christian nation, like, really takes root.
It becomes a core part of the conservative movement.
Totally. And to really understand how much it resonated, we got to hear a personal story. The episode features this guy, Bradley Onishi.
Okay, lay it on me. Who's Bradley Onishi?
So he grew up evangelical Christian, like right in the thick of this whole thing.
What was it like for him?
He describes this childhood where faith and patriotism were like totally intertwined,
Okay, yeah.
He was out there evangelizing, protesting abortion, like the whole deal. He really believed in this Christian America vision. He even calls his church community his family.
It sounds like he was all in.
Oh, yeah, deeply committed. But, and this is where it gets interesting, his perspective changed.
Oh, how so? What happened?
Well, he moves to the UK to study theology.
Whoa, big change.
Right. And being away from his usual scene, he starts questioning everything.
Like his whole belief system?
Pretty much. He realizes that what he thought was just Christianity was actually deeply tied to American nationalism.
That's a huge realization.
It is. And he starts to see how this whole ideology, even though it felt inclusive to him, was actually excluding a lot of people.
Those who didn't fit the Christian America mold?
Exactly. And that's a key point because it raises the question, how many people still believe in this today? Is it just a small group or is it more widespread than we think? It's a question a lot of people are asking. And like the NPR episode gets into some stuff happening today and it's kind of wild.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Okay, so you know about those Freedom Sunday things, the events popping up all over.
I've heard of them, but to be honest, I'm not totally sure what they are.
So basically, it's where politics and religion get all mixed up in these church services.
Mixed up how?
Like you'll have pastors straight up endorsing candidates right from the pulpit or pushing political stuff but calling it Christian values.
That seems like a line a lot of people wouldn't be cool with crossing.
Yeah, it definitely brings up those whole separation of church and state questions. And then there's January 6th.
The Capitol riot?
Yeah, I mean, all those Christian symbols and stuff right there with the rioters. It was intense.
Those images were hard to shake. People with crosses shouting Jesus' name while storming the Capitol. Like, what?
It shows how this ideology can be used not just to divide people, but in a way that's actually dangerous, you know?
So are we saying all Christians are down with this Christian nation idea?
No way, not at all. The episode actually points out that a lot of Christian leaders have condemned this kind of extreme stuff. They're like, this is twisting the real message of Christianity, which they see is about love and compassion and fighting for justice.
That makes sense. It feels like lumping specific political stuff in with Christianity ignores how many different beliefs there are within the faith.
Exactly. And even within the Christian nationalist movement, there are different viewpoints. It's not just one big group thinking the exact same way.
So there are different levels of, like, how much people buy into this.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Support for this isn't just from white people, which is what people tend to think.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. It is surprising given, how we talked about this chosen nation idea being used to justify slavery and white supremacy and all that.
It is, and it makes this whole thing even more complex, right? Because there's a good chunk of Black Americans who actually agree with some of these Christian nationalist ideas.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and the Throughline episode gets into it, and basically it points out that America's history is full of groups using Christianity to justify all sorts of things from, the really bad stuff like slavery to expanding westward and taking land.
That's like that chosen nation idea was just molded to fit whatever people wanted.
Totally. And it brings up this question, like, why are people drawn to this? Even with all the baggage, the way it's been used to justify bad stuff.
That's a good question. What does the episode say about that?
Well, it says that part of why people like it is because it gives them a sense of belonging and purpose. Like in a world where it feels like everything's changing and nothing makes sense.
And religion doesn't have the same hold as it used to.
Exactly. Christian nationalism can be like, here's who you are, here's what's right and wrong, here's your community. It can feel like safety, when everything else feels chaotic.
Yeah, I can see that. People want certainty, especially when things are changing so fast.
Totally. And for a lot of folks, it goes beyond just religion. It's about culture, feeling like their way of life is fading away or being threatened.
You said before that fear plays a part here. What do you mean?
Fear is a powerful thing. As America gets more diverse religiously and culturally, some Christians feel like, hey, what about us? Our values are under attack. They look at secularism, LGBTQ plus rights, the whole traditional family thing not being the norm anymore, and they see it as the country moving away from what they believe.
Almost like a vicious cycle. The more afraid they get, the more they want things to stay the same, which just makes them more afraid.
Exactly. And politicians know how to use that fear. They see a chance to get votes by playing on those anxieties.
Oh yeah, we see that all the time.
It makes it harder for people to even talk to each other, to find common ground. It becomes us versus them.
So where does that leave people like Bradley Onishi, who've moved away from Christian nationalism but still believe? Where do they fit in?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Like, where do you go from there? And Anishi's story kind of gives us a clue.
Yeah, I'm really curious about how he handled all that.
Yeah.
Like, how did he square his faith with, realizing all this about America?
So he talks about this idea of, separating faith from nationalism. He started to see Christianity as this, global thing, not tied to any one country or political party.
Yeah.
He's like, true faith is about connecting with people, not building walls.
Man, that's so relevant. Right?
Yeah.
Especially with everything going on, all the division and fighting.
Big time. And it kind of brings us back to that question from the beginning, the whole, what does it even mean to be American thing? If it's not about being Christian, then what is it about?
Yeah, it's like we're at this crossroads trying to figure out who we are and what we want America to be.
We are. And I think this episode kind of points us in a direction. It reminds us that America has always been this mix of people, cultures, beliefs, the whole melting pot
A
thing.
melting pot. Right.
And that's not a bad thing. It's actually like what makes us strong.
That's a good point, because it feels like all we hear about is what divides us these days.
Right. So the challenge is, how do we appreciate those differences but still hold on to the values that make a democracy work? Stuff like freedom of religion, treating everyone equally under the law, respecting each other's rights.
Those are things everyone should be able to get behind no matter what they believe.
Exactly. If we can get back to focusing on those shared ideas, maybe, just maybe, we can build a place where everyone feels like they belong, whether they're religious or not, what culture they come from, all that.
Sounds great on paper, but man, putting it into practice in this political climate,
That's got to be tough.
it's not going to be easy, that's for sure. But I think it starts with us talking to each other, like actually listening to people we disagree with.
Without yelling at them on Twitter.
Exactly, haha.
Yeah.
Building bridges, not walls, remember?
Yeah, but that's hard when everyone's stuck in their own little echo chambers online. True, but it's not impossible. And remember, things don't change overnight. It takes time, empathy, and a willingness to find some middle ground.
It's good to hear a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
This whole conversation has really made me think about, like, what I believe about America. The whole religion and politics thing, it's not something I'd really thought about deeply before.
That's the cool thing about these deep dives, right? They push us to question stuff, to really wrestle with these big issues. And hopefully we come out of it able to talk about them in a way that's, I don't know, more thoughtful and informed.
I definitely feel like I've learned a lot. So as we wrap this up, anything else you want to leave our listeners with? Any advice on how to handle all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that America's story isn't over yet. Like, we're all still writing it. And we all have a part to play in making it better. Let's work towards a place where everyone feels valued and respected no matter what they believe or where they come from. To me, that's what a real city on a hill looks like, a place that actually lives up to those ideals of inclusivity and justice.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into Christian nationalism. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, stay curious and keep those conversations going.